In 2024, more than 10,600 people in San Diego County are living without stable housing, a number larger than many small towns across the U.S.
Well, and then they have to get money from the homeless and then use it inappropriately, like they appropriated money or funds that were meant billions of dollars, dude. They just disappeared.
Of course, we sleep outside every night. Oh my gosh, how long have you been homeless? 8 years.
But this isn't just about statistics. It's a person waking up early in a city park, a parent unsure where the family will sleep tonight, a routine disrupted, not by choice, but by circumstance. San Diego, known for its coastlines and calm, now faces a growing housing crisis that's harder to ignore. Nationally, homelessness rose 18% in just 1 year, and San Diego is among the hardest hit. You may have a job, a home, a plan, but so did many of the people now living outside. This isn't about blame, it's about understanding. So before we look away, let's look closer, because the story unfolding here may be closer than we think. As usual, this is not a pessimistic warning, but a perspective reflecting various sources to help the community understand better and prepare proactively. Are you ready to explore the first group? Let's start right now. Beyond the figure of 10,600 people living without stable housing in San Diego as of early 2025 lies something harder to quantify. Lives disrupted, routines altered, and moments of uncertainty that unfold quietly across the city. In 2023, nearly 29% of the city's unsheltered population was over the age of 55. Many once wore uniforms and served their country. Now, they navigate sidewalks and side streets with quiet dignity, carrying not medals, but weather-worn backpacks. This likely wasn't how they imagined retirement, and for many, it's not the path they expected. Shift the view. Over 5,000 people in San Diego accessed emergency housing. Shelters provide safety for the night, but they're not the same as having a home. Even young children can sense that difference. The noise, the shared spaces, the lack of permanence. These aren't abstract images. They're parts of the same city where we shop, commute, and raise families. And the difference between them and us might be smaller than it seems. Sometimes it's a job that ended unexpectedly, a bill that couldn't wait, a health issue that lingered longer than the budget allowed, moments that could unfold in any household. Certain patterns also speak to something deeper. Black residents make up around 22% of the unhoused population in San Diego, despite being a smaller percentage of the city overall. It's more than a number. It reflects long-standing disparities in access to housing, credit, and income stability. And it invites reflection. If certain groups are overrepresented in hardship, what systemic barriers still remain? Perhaps one of the clearest signs of a system under stress is this. For every 10 people who secured housing in San Diego between late 2022 and late 2023, 16 others became newly homeless. This isn't for lack of effort. It's a signal that the pace of need is outstripping the capacity to respond. Still, there are glimmers of movement in the right direction. In 2023, unsheltered homelessness among families dropped by 25%. Targeted outreach, when supported with the right tools, can make a difference. A short-term shelter, a supportive hand, or a timely referral can give someone the breathing room they need to begin again, because behind each data point is someone navigating today the best they can. A woman applying for housing, a man checking job boards on library Wi-Fi, a teenager quietly looking for somewhere to charge a phone and feel safe for a few hours. And maybe this story doesn't only belong to San Diego. If a rent hike, an unexpected illness, or a missed paycheck could tip someone from stability to the edge, how far is any of us from the same line? And perhaps a better question is, when we pass someone living outside, would we recognize their story, or simply keep walking? Homelessness rarely happens overnight, and almost never from a single event. For many in San Diego, the path to housing loss begins quietly. A shift in work hours, a surprise medical expense, a rent increase that outpaces a paycheck. It's not one moment. It's the slow accumulation of pressure that eventually becomes too much to carry. Housing costs remain one of the largest contributors. In 2022, the average apartment in San Diego cost over $2,700 per month, more than $32,000 a year, just for rent. For many full-time workers, that's nearly an entire annual income. Households with the lowest income are spending up to 69% of their pay on housing alone. So what happens when something small, a flat tire, reduced shifts, a child's illness, enters the picture? When 7 out of every $10 goes to rent, the margin for recovery disappears. A single unexpected cost can start a chain reaction. For many families, one missed paycheck is all it takes for that fragile balance to break. But this isn't just about numbers. It's about the human experience of not having a stable place to rest. Imagine trying to sleep outside, unsure who might walk by, or whether your belongings will still be there in the morning. That constant uncertainty wears on people, especially those already facing personal challenges. And without privacy, quiet, or safety, even the simplest steps forward, like attending a job interview or getting a routine checkup, become difficult. Some individuals, in the absence of early support, may begin relying on short-term ways to get through the day. It's not a reflection of who they are, but of what the system didn't offer in time. Ask yourself, if you lost your home tomorrow, what would you need just to feel okay for one night? A safe place, someone to check in, a moment to breathe. Wider patterns also speak to longer histories. In San Diego, Black residents make up about 5% of the population, but account for 22% of those experiencing homelessness. That gap didn't appear randomly. It reflects decades of unequal access to stable housing, affordable loans, and consistent healthcare. When stressors like the pandemic hit, those gaps widened even further. After eviction protections ended, the city saw about 10 evictions per day, each one a quiet turning point in a family's story. When we think of homelessness, we often picture tents on sidewalks or someone sleeping on a bench. But the deeper cost? It's quieter, and it cuts deeper than we realize. In San Diego, more than 5,000 people live each day without a permanent place to call home. That's not just a statistic. It's thousands of lives spent in survival mode, trying to make it through one more night. Living outside means facing the elements head-on. From scorching heat to cold desert nights, the body absorbs the stress, over and over again. These conditions can wear someone down faster than we think. And it's not just about weather. Finding clean water, a place to shower, even a spot to brush your teeth becomes a daily obstacle. Things many of us do without thinking suddenly require time, effort, and safety planning. Then there's the emotional toll. Each night, there's a question of safety. Can I rest here? Will my belongings be okay? Will I be okay? These questions never stop. And that constant alertness slowly erodes peace of mind and confidence. And then comes the quietest struggle of all: isolation. It's not just being without shelter, it's being without connection. People may walk past, avoid eye contact, or not see you at all. That feeling of being invisible? It can be harder than the cold. It's no surprise that many individuals living without shelter experience emotional overwhelm and mental strain. But here's the challenge. How do you focus on wellness when you're just trying to make it through the day? And getting back on your feet isn't as simple as it sounds. Try finding work without a fixed address. Try filling out forms with no phone, no internet. Try staying motivated when the world feels like it's moved on without you. This is more than a housing issue. It's a health issue, a stability issue, a dignity issue, and maybe the hardest part to admit. It could happen to more people than we think. Because all it takes is one unexpected moment, a job loss, a medical emergency, a rent increase. So ask yourself, if that happened to you, would you still think this only happens to someone else? When it comes to homelessness in San Diego, one question keeps coming up. What's actually being done? And is it enough? Because good intentions alone don't create long-term change. It takes choices, and those choices reflect what a city and a community truly prioritize. In recent years, some local policies have focused on regulating where people can sleep in public spaces. The intention, according to city officials, is often to maintain cleanliness, public access, and a sense of safety. But this approach, while visible, raises a deeper concern. Does relocating people address the reasons they were outside in the first place? When encampments are cleared, individuals often lose essential belongings, blankets, identification, medication, or items that help them navigate daily life. Connections with outreach teams may be disrupted, and rather than solving the issue, many people simply move, often farther from services, making support harder to access. So a real question emerges. Are we solving the problem, or just shifting where it shows up? At the same time, there are efforts that offer a different path forward. One of the most studied models is called Housing First. The idea is simple. Provide a stable place to live, no preconditions. Once housing is in place, supportive services like job training, medical care, or counseling can follow. This model recognizes that without a home, long-term stability is hard to build. Research backs it up. Studies across the US have shown that Housing First not only helps people stay housed, but also reduces public spending on emergency response, temporary shelter, and repeat interventions. Another proven strategy is Permanent Supportive Housing, PSH. This combines affordable housing with ongoing assistance, such as case management and wellness support, especially for those who've experienced long-term housing instability. Programs like these help people not just survive, but regain a sense of stability and direction. Still, building these solutions isn't always easy. Even when funding is available, progress can be delayed by zoning rules, community resistance, or long timelines for development. And in the meantime, people remain in limbo, waiting for a door that hasn't yet been built. So the real question becomes, what kind of city do we want to be? Do we want to keep managing the crisis at the surface, or begin investing in deeper, more lasting solutions? Imagine if just a portion of what's spent on short-term responses went toward affordable housing that lasts. Imagine if support systems were clear, coordinated, and ready before people reached a breaking point. Because housing instability rarely begins overnight, and it won't disappear overnight either. But change begins with something simple, a door that opens, and a place to rest that feels like home. As we arrive at the end of this closer look into San Diego's housing crisis, a quiet truth begins to settle in. This isn't a hopeless problem. It's a deeply human one. More than 10,600 people in San Diego are currently living without a permanent place to call home. And while that number may sound large, it becomes something else entirely when we remember that behind each digit is a person. Someone's sibling, co-worker, parent, or friend. They are not others. They are part of this community. And for many, it's not that they fell through the cracks. It's that the cracks were never designed to hold them in the first place. Throughout this journey, we've seen the challenges up close. Housing costs rising faster than wages. Families spending 60 to 70% of their income just to keep a roof overhead. Queue support systems that respond slowly, or not at all, until someone has already reached crisis. But we've also seen what's possible when action meets understanding. Programs like Housing First, which offer stable housing with no strings attached, have helped people re-establish safety and rebuild trust in their futures. Permanent Supportive Housing, which combines shelter with long-term care and planning, shows that when support is sustained, outcomes are more stable. These solutions don't just improve lives, they reduce pressure on emergency systems, lower long-term costs, and bring back something that's harder to measure, a sense of belonging. So we're left with a simple question. If we know what works, why aren't we doing more? Imagine a city where housing is treated like healthcare or education, not as a prize, but as a foundation. Where people don't wait until everything has fallen apart to find help. Where public spaces feel open to all, not because the issue has been moved out of sight, but because it's being addressed at the source, that future may feel distant. But it begins with the choices we make now, in policy, in planning, and in how we relate to one another. It reflects what we value, our willingness to notice, our willingness to respond. And maybe the shift begins with one simple reminder. No one should be defined by the hardest season of their life, and no one should have to face it alone. You don't have to run a shelter. You don't have to fix the entire system. But that doesn't mean you can't make a difference. Sometimes it starts with something small, something as simple as seeing someone, making eye contact, offering a kind word, treating someone not as a problem to avoid, but as a person still deserving of respect. Because often, the smallest gestures remind someone that they still exist in the eyes of others. And that alone can mean more than we realize. If you're able to give, even a little, consider donating. Not just money, but the things that can make someone's day less difficult. A pair of clean socks, travel-sized hygiene items, a reusable water bottle, a backpack or blanket, even an old phone that still works. These items may seem basic, but they can help someone stay warm, stay connected, or simply feel human again. If you have a few hours a month, volunteering is another way to show up. Local organizations, from food programs to housing outreach to community health clinics, often rely on volunteers. Not just quick hands, but steady hearts. People willing to listen, to learn, and to lend a hand where it's needed. You don't need special skills, just a willingness to be present. And if you vote, which many of us do, consider using your voice there too. Ask the harder questions. What's your city doing to make rent more manageable? Are affordable housing projects being prioritized? And where are they being built? Who's advocating not just for short-term fixes, but for long-term solutions? And importantly, who's speaking up for those without a voice in these rooms? Because public policy isn't just shaped in city halls. It's shaped by who shows up, who speaks up, and who's remembered when decisions are made. No one expects you to solve everything, but maybe you can do one thing. And that one thing, a gesture, a vote, a conversation, a donation, might land at just the right time for someone who needs it most. Because while systems change slowly, people can act quickly. And sometimes, change doesn't begin with a movement. It begins with a moment, one that say, I see you, and you still matter. Maybe you've been there. A paycheck arrived late. A hospital bill came out of nowhere. A job ended sooner than expected, and with it, the stability you had built. You did the math. You looked at your savings, checked your calendar, and counted the days you could stretch what was left. And for a moment, even if you didn't say it out loud, you were afraid. Maybe it didn't go any further. Maybe things worked out, but maybe it got close. Perhaps it wasn't you, but someone you care about. A friend who crashed on your couch just for a few nights. A sibling who stopped answering texts because they were too embarrassed to say they were living in their car. A former co-worker who left a job quietly and hasn't shown up anywhere since. And maybe deep down, you've always known that the distance between getting by and slipping behind is much shorter than we like to admit. Because for many people, this isn't about bad decisions. It's about bad timing. It's about a system that doesn't move quickly, especially when the ground starts shifting beneath your feet. It's the space between two paychecks when the car breaks down, the months between filing paperwork and actually getting help, the days spent trying to stay hopeful, even when the safety net that was supposed to catch you isn't there yet. If that feels familiar, even a little, then maybe this story matters to you more than you realized. Because it's not just a story about them, it's about all of us. Most of us don't plan for crisis. We plan for progress. The next step, the next raise, the next opportunity. But what happens when the plan changes suddenly and without warning? And what if that one disruption had come at a different time in your life, when you had fewer savings or less support? Would your story be different? There's something grounding about asking those questions. Not to create fear, but to grow understanding. Because when we realize how thin the line can be, we also realize how much community matters. We begin to see how powerful it is when systems work, when help is easy to access, when housing is viewed not as a reward for success, but as a basic part of recovery. And we begin to understand that the people we pass on the sidewalk aren't so different from ourselves. They've had careers, families, plans, and for 1,000 different reasons, those plans were interrupted. If we carry that truth with us, not with guilt, but with perspective, then maybe, just maybe, we can build a future where no one has to face that interruption alone, where slipping behind doesn't mean disappearing, and where rebuilding isn't just possible, it's supported. Because in the end, this isn't only about who ends up on the edge. It's about what kind of ground we've built underneath all of us, and whether it's strong enough. When someone needs it most, homelessness in San Diego isn't just a crisis. It's a reflection of what we value and who we include. Today, over 10,600 people in our city live without a stable home. Not because they gave up, but because support came too late or didn't come at all.